Now, at home, I highly advise listening to just specific sections. For instance, the frequencies we're going to talk about here, um, separated just by themselves so you can really hear what's in those areas. And that will help you understand how to use an equalizer and also the frequencies that exist in these areas. Um, when you're boosting them, subtracting them, it's really good to know how it affects the entire mix when mastering. And therefore, really, it's great to understand specifically those areas. So, one thing I would recommend is really, for instance, set up an EQ and do this. Just get a low shelf filter and bring it way up here. Wait, let's turn these off here. And have a high shelf as well. And just focus on those frequencies and see what's inside there. So let's do that right now. We're going to focus just on the top end and the top frequencies. Okay, now just for example, and this is to give you an idea on how to understand transients and high frequencies and how they're so intertwined. And I've got the mix here of this tune running through these filters, just two of them. I'm using a low cut, 24 dB, and the high shelf. And we're boosting a little bit of the top and rolling everything off below this area. In other words, the entire mix from there back has been turned down all the way. Now, once again, the reason we're doing this is just so you can hear what part of the music exists in these frequencies from this area up. From roughly around, let's just say 3 kilohertz up, 3000 up. Oop, there we go. Now we're hearing primarily transients. And what is that? Those high frequencies, the transients have so much to do with clarity in a mix. And this is the reason that a shelving type of filter would be used on the top end and therefore be more musical as opposed to a peaking style filter, is because in bringing that up, you're going to be bringing up more transients and therefore clarity. And that exists entirely in that set of frequencies in this area here. Now, let's take a minute and just listen to the middle. You may notice on this EQ, it's going to be different from some others. We're still just using two filters. We're using the roll-offs, so we're using the same filters that we just used. And we're just rolling off bottom from here down and top from here up. And we're hearing flat the center frequencies of this music. Now you're going to hear quite a different sound, but also a different characteristic, and I'll explain it in a second. Okay. Now, what's happening here is that what's in the middle, the meat of the music, you can hear so much more of the melodic content. So in the center frequencies exists pretty much the melody and the melodic content, which carries the listener's ear. It's really the most important area. If you can have just one area, and a good example of this is back in it's still common today. There's lots of little transistor radios that you can hear in the workplace or in your car or wherever, where really they can only reproduce the center frequencies because it's just one little tiny speaker. And that's enough. You can still hear the music. Now, if you were to just have a speaker that would only reproduce the very top or the very bottom, it wouldn't work because the melody wouldn't be carried. In the middle area, the middle frequencies, which is generally controlled by a parametric type of, or a peak type of filter, that's where all the music is. That's where all the melody is, I mean. And that's how the music is conceived through those frequencies. Have a listen again. Now that's only these frequencies that we're hearing. And this is to give you a better understanding of how music itself works and how they work in relationship to equalizers. So you can see the equalizer has a lot of power over what's going to really be the final result. Now, this is completely missing the transients of the high frequencies. And if you were to bring just those in, turn off one of these, let's have a listen to that. It's important to note that every one of those channels is just flattened out, and we haven't done any mix. There's no effects or anything, no EQ on any of those channels. This is just to demonstrate how audio works in itself. And we're looking at one filter here. Everything's going through that. And we're only hearing flat this range. Now, that's really close to what a transistor radio is going to do. And yes, you can hear the music. And now that we've added the top end, we really have some transients in there. Now, let's add the bottom in and then listen to that individually for a minute. Well, that makes all the difference in the world. Once again, we're just hearing a flat, and this tune is not mixed at all. But we can see how much difference there is in the perception of the music in just the three areas of frequencies that we're looking at. You add the bottom end, and it adds a physicality to the music. In other words, you can feel it in your body more, even if it's not thumping on the ground with a heavy bass. The warmth of the bottom end of the bass and the punch of the kick drum really drives the music and gives it a more physical characteristic. And this is why dance music is so heavily laden with low frequencies, is because it's more physical and it's also more believable. But let's focus on just taking those low frequencies and hearing what's in that area, just so we can examine that for a second. Okay, now we're looking at just the one filter on, and it's the high cut. And we're actually cutting all the highs out and the mids all the way down to just a flat area here in the bottom range. And let's see what that sounds like. Now, you may be thinking, boy, it sounds like my neighbor's apartment. Well, low frequencies can travel through wood and through materials much easier than high frequencies can or mid frequencies. So, once again, they're very physical and they oscillate at a very low range, and therefore that enables it to be something that is felt and also that travels through materials. So, they're very, very powerful in what they bring to the mix. But as you can hear, there's no musicality in there other than um, the fact that you've already heard the song and you have a little sense of the tempo. The tempo's in there. You can hear the pacing of this song. And that's what's so important about the bottom end is it really does relate to the tempo and the movement and the physicality of the tune. So it's essentially very important in perception that you understand the three levels, three areas, the top, the mids, and the bottoms, and what they bring to the mix in order to make a good mix, and also in order to work with an equalizer. That's why you need to understand those areas. So let's get into some just very quick shaping and how we're going to focus on how different areas can change a tune dramatically.